Hi, in this short video, I'm going to look at the question of why don't we use passive voice in action research, which is, as an examiner or a critical reader, I'm forever saying, don't use the passive voice. But I think some people don't even understand what I mean, what is meant by voice. Okay, so the active voice, as opposed to passive, refers to a sentence format that emphasizes the doer of an action. Okay, I do something. The passive voice lends it a personal tone, which in the past people said you had to use in research. I mean, your promoter and our supervisor would say you mustn't use an impersonal, a personal approach in research. But things have changed, like everything else. And in qualitative research, and particularly action research, we don't like the use of the passive voice. It also makes the text wordy, difficult to understand, especially when used in long sentences, and sometimes the verb comes right at the end. So a very, very simple explanation is the data was generated. Now, in action research, we like to give people agency. We're working with people, not on them. So we like to say rather, the participants generated the data, or I generated the data in collaboration with the participants. So we know who actually generated the data. It gives agency. Another example, the passive would be in this study, the assistance that parents gave to the children to prepare them for school was investigated. You can see how the verb, when you use a passive, the verb comes right at the end. And so you've got to read a few sentences before you understand the sentence. Whereas in the active voice would be, in this study, participants worked together to investigate how parents could assist their preschool children with school readiness. And to me, that is much clearer. So that's what we mean by active and passive. It's a philosophical principle of action research that you have to give agency to the people you're working with or to yourself. And then that brings us to the next question of, okay, sorry, it doesn't yet. I'm not very good at this. Voice indicates whether the subject of a sentence is the actor or the receiver of the action. Okay, in the active voice, the subject of the sentence does the acting. So you can see how it goes with action research. In the passive voice, the subject is acted upon. In participatory action research, we work with people, not on them. One example from a recent study that I had a look at was, what guidelines can be compiled for educators to enhance the rehabilitation of youth offenders in prison schools? It's quite easy to understand, but you see, if you switch it around to the action research philosophy, the meaning changes, or the whole sense changes. How can educators in prison schools improve their teaching of offenders to enhance rehabilitation outcomes? You see the difference there. The guidelines are being compiled for educators by the researcher, no doubt. In the second one, the educators in the prison schools are working to improve their own teaching of offenders so as to enhance the rehabilitation of the offender. So there's, it can really make a difference, and you have to be consistent. I remember one of my doctoral candidates, no, actually she was master's at the time, the examiner critiqued her because she used I the whole way through, and then in the final chapter she switched to the researcher, and you know it was asked why, what is going on. The secret was that she'd used researcher the whole way around, and I'd made a change in, but she'd just forgotten about it. So, can I use I in my study? Well, of course you can. That's the short answer. In action research studies, you'll be critiqued for using the researcher, as I just said. You should position yourself in the study so that the reader can have an idea of how you might influence the process. Because it's all about subjectivity, about me. I'm not trying to be objective. I'm not saying, this study was done by some unknown researcher. The study was done by myself. And so it's very important that you say up front what it is you stand for. I'll give you an example, and I'm going to read this from one of my PhD students, who was a principal in a school. And right at the beginning of the study, in the first chapter, he states, my positioning in the study as a full participant is important because not only was I principal of the school, but it was also informed by my own political and philosophical beliefs. Among these personal beliefs that are the values of Ubuntu and personal and organizational transformation. These are complemented by personal agency and engaging in prevailing social injustices in society through activism in school. I draw now, okay, we leave that bit out. And then he says, Power allowed me to participate in the study by working within a collective, navigating through understanding our own ontological and epistemological assumptions of how we made sense of the work that we did. Now, as an examiner looking at that, I know straight away that the author is now in a dual role of power. He's principal of the school, but he's also part of the study. And he as that, so he has two hats to play. So he wants to participate fully. I also know that he's politically oriented, that he stands for social justice, and that all of these beliefs and assumptions merge to influence the study in some way or another. So as an examiner, straight away, as I'm reading this study or assessing the study, I'm going to say at the end, did this person, this researcher, we can call him a researcher now because it's a general term, explain how he sought to minimize power relations in the study? Did he enhance or try to facilitate full and equal participation? Did he enact throughout the study the values of Ubuntu that he professed to have? Did the research process remain true to social justice intent? Has he provided evidence of critical reflection on practice and the change emanating from it? And how were the other participants involved in making sense of the research? So those are the kind of questions as an examiner I will be asking myself, because this person has stated who he is and what he stands for. So I'm looking for evidence of that throughout the study. So you can see the study is not objective. The researcher is very much part of it. So please, when you're doing the study, say I, we, and did XYZ, not the researcher. The data was gathered by the researcher. Okay, thank you.